Hi there. If you've ever suffered from tomato blight, you will know just how fast and destructive it can be. You can have perfectly healthy tomato plants one day, blight hits within a day or so. Your tomato, the plants, the fruits, everything goes a horrible, horrible black, and basically those tomato plants will die very, very quickly. Once you have blight, it's very difficult to get rid of. So in today's video, I'm going to give you 11 tips on how to prevent and really reduce the risk of getting blight in the first place. But before we get started, I think it's good to explain exactly what tomato blight is. It's a fungal disease that lives in spores in the air. It can also live in your soil, but is generally spread airbound. So you want to reduce every single possibility and minimize all those conditions that the tomato blight fungal disease loves and thrives in. Tomato blight loves dark, damp, wet, humid conditions, and it's very easy to get those conditions, especially in mid to late summer when your tomato plants are in full bloom, they're crowded, you're trying your best to keep up with the watering. It can get very hot and humid in a greenhouse. So I'm going to show you how to reduce those conditions in 11 easy steps. Every single step I'm going to show you today is quick, simple, easy, and very, very cheap. In most cases, you don't actually have to spend any money at all. As you can see, I grow lots of different tomatoes in my greenhouse. I've got 7 different varieties. On one side, I've got the Sweet Million, which always produce an abundance of small cherry-sized tomatoes, which are really, really sweet. And then coming onto the other side, I've got a variety of different types. We've got such things like the Honeycomb. We've got the Indigo Blue Beauty, which is just starting to change now. It'll turn colour. Fantastic variety, full of flavour. I've got the Sunstripe. Very, very nice in a salad and tastes lovely. I've got the big beefsteak, or should I say the super steak variety. Really, really large tomato. And then I've got more Sweet Million. Make sure you stick around to the end of this video, because the final tip will literally be the greatest tip of all, the cheapest. It actually costs no money, this tip, but it really is, for me, the most important tip. So that will be coming up at the end of this video. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to tell you about tip number 1. So you might be able to see in front of me, I actually plant my tomatoes in grow bags. I've done this for a number of years because I believe by growing in grow bags brings with it its own benefits. Okay, as mentioned, tomato blight, the fungal disease itself, can live in soil. So by planting and using tomato bags and planters, grow bags should I say, this means that is new fresh soil every year. I'm not using the same soil, meaning that obviously if I have got it living in my soil, that alone does reduce the risk. Now it could be that I introduce it in these bags, I get that, but it'll only be for this year. Next year hopefully it won't be there. But as you can also see, when you plant into grow bags, you only cut a small hole exactly where you want the plant to go, and all the rest of the soil is actually covered up by the plastic. Now, what that does means that when you water, there's less chance of the water hitting the soil and bouncing back up and then infecting your plants, because the blight is in the soil. It then releases those spores and can then get into the lower leaves of your plants. That is one way that grow bags actually help reduce the risk of blight. I also use solar watering systems, which means that a few times per day, the solar drippers water directly at the root of the plant, meaning that I don't have to water from overhead with a watering can that can actually soak all the leaves and again cause that big splashback from the soil within. So these are fantastic. They don't just save you water and save you time and effort, but a couple of times a day they'll just go off. They go off whatever you set them to. I have them about for 10 minutes a few times per day, and as you can see, they go along all of my plants, just saving me that time and effort every single day of coming down to water, but also keeps it consistent, as tomato plants really love a consistent water. These are relatively cheap. I will put the links in the description below. They are my Amazon affiliate links. So if you do want to purchase one, I will get a few pennies per every purchase to help support the channel. Another really important job to do this time of year, especially when your tomato plants are in full bloom, full leaf, is to remove those lower leaves, especially to avoid that splashback from your soil onto the plant. As long as the blight spores don't get onto your plant, then you should be fine. So especially now, you should be taking off any of the lower leaves. You've got to be careful. Sometimes you've got to follow up and find out if it's got any tomatoes on, but that's a main stem. I'm just going to take off everything that has not got tomatoes on now, anything up to about 10 inches from the top. You might see some of these leaves are starting to turn yellow. That's another good sign. Take them off now. It might look and feel a bit brutal, but believe me, this is one of the most important jobs you should be doing with your tomatoes at this time of year. This is almost 2 tips in one. Remove all of the lower leaves. Also remove any dead, diseased or dying looking leaves. So there's one that's died. I'm going to take it off. By leaving them on the plant, you are increasing the risk of blight. Just because leaves can go moldy, they will attract more fungus, attract that horrible tomato blight that we're trying to avoid. So go around your plants, taking off these lower leaves. As I say, I normally take off all those lower leaves to about a foot off the bottom of the plant at this time of year. We are in the second week of August. So this is an ideal time. Also, you can see some of these plants here, especially where I am showing you now, they are quite crowded. So again, you can just look to take out some of these leaves. This acts 2 ways. It increases the airflow, puts that air circulation in there, but also allows more light and sunshine to get to your tomatoes to really ripen up those green ones. So this is actually 2 tips in one. As you can see, these are now starting to look quite bare towards the bottom. In fact, look, there is an old leaf that had already died. Take it off, get rid of it. But I'm just starting now to trim off anything around the bottom of the plant. Remember, don't leave them on the floor. Again, they can start to decompose and attract more fungus in. So I'm just going to take off more of these. There's a good example of some yellow ones. They need to be taken off, especially these. That is perfectly normal for tomato plants to start going yellow, especially towards the base of the plants. You can see there is quite a lot of crowded in here. That's one example that side. On the other side, it's actually quite dark. In fact, the camera is showing that really well. It's dark by the fact that all those shadows are caused by those leaves. So I'll be thinning these out today. Another good tip, especially if you're planting your tomato plants directly into the ground and the soil, to avoid that splashback, to release those pores that then bounce up off the soil when you're watering and hit your plants, is just to use some mulch. You can literally use anything from hay, straw, old grass cuttings. You basically put them around the base of the plant. As you're watering on there, the soil itself can't bounce up and splash onto your plants as easily. As I say, I'm using grow bags. It's not much of a problem for me, or not as much of a problem. So I don't really need to mulch there. But mulching can also help keep the water in. It does have a few good benefits. So always bear in mind, mulching or covering the top layer of your soil with something. In fact, next year, I'm thinking of growing them in the soil, because there is soil underneath these bags, but putting some kind of weed control membrane along the top, and then basically just holes in that. That will again help reduce that splashback from that soil. Spacing your tomato plants out is also very important. A lot of people try and cram as many tomato plants into their space as they can. I've got about 14 plants in here, and each one is spaced at least 10 inches apart, probably a little bit more. You probably need to do a little bit more than that, but it always seems to work for me. In fact, these tomato bags, these grow bags, actually say you can fit 3 in per bag. So that must be something to do with the ideal spacing. But as you can see, it's probably 10 to 12 inches apart on each of them, and that gives it plenty of space then. Ventilation is probably one of the most important things you can do at this time of year to prevent tomato blight. And what I actually have at the end of my greenhouse is some solar fans. One pumps in the air, in fact that's a lovely breeze on a day like today, and the other one takes the air out. It just helps to increase that airflow. So use some solar fans. Again, the links to these will be in the description below. They're not that expensive, but again, they will be my Amazon affiliate links. And as promised, this is the number one tip of this whole video. It is just simply to leave your greenhouse door open. I leave this door open from about the 1st of June onwards. I find that it's warm enough, even the night time is plenty warm enough for everything I have growing in here. I've got cucumbers, I've got peppers, I've even got melons down there. So just leave the door open. I'll leave my window open. In fact, I've got some panes of glass missing in this greenhouse. All this helps increase the ventilation. Ventilation is the number one tip to reduce the risk of your tomato plants catching blight. So keep that ventilation going. Make sure there's a pathway that the airflow can flow. As I say, down here is the fans. We just have this nice airflow. I generally don't water from above, I water from below. I reduce the lower leaves, I reduce the crowdedness. These are all the things you need to do to stop yourself getting blight. Do you really want to spend 6 months preparing and looking after your tomato plants for them simply to be killed overnight by blight? I don't. I do hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have, please remember to give me one of those big likes. Leave me a comment, really do enjoy the interaction. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. So I'm going to get cracking and trim off all these lower leaves and some of the mid leaves as well, just to increase that air circulation and get these tomatoes ripened. So thanks for watching everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye now.